Hi, sorry, we're chatting with my next guest, and you're going to hear from him in a moment, too. We've got breaking developments tonight after Rolling Stone magazine publishes a bombshell piece on an alleged gang rape at the University of Virginia. The campus erupted in protests over what was described as a rape culture there, and all the fraternities and the sororities were suspended after that piece hit. But soon thereafter, some started to question the horrifying claims at the center of the article. And while the author and the magazine's editors initially stood by their story, citing the courage of the young woman who came forward with her tale, they are singing a very different tune tonight. Trace Gallagher has more from our West Coast newsroom. Trace?
Megan, keep in mind the article led to a police investigation, as you said, the suspension of all fraternities and a vow to greatly increase the policing of any future parties on campus. And now every key detail has either been disputed or debunked. The article, written by Sabrina Rubin Erdely, tells the story of a freshman named Jackie, who on September 28, 2012, was allegedly gang raped at a fraternity party by 7 men pledging for Phi Kappa Psi. But the fraternity says there was no party on September 28th. And that Phi Kappa Psi doesn't have pledges in the fall. And the Washington Post reports the man Jackie claims took her to the party and orchestrated the rape wasn't a member of Phi Kappa Psi, and says that while he knows Jackie, he's never taken her anywhere. The writer said she never contacted the alleged attackers because Jackie asked her not to. And as of yesterday, Rolling Stone was fine with that, saying it found Jackie's story, quote, entirely credible and courageous. Now the magazine is backpedaling, saying, quote, there now appear to be discrepancies in Jackie's account, and we have come to the conclusion that our trust in her was misplaced. We now regret not contacting the alleged assaulters to get their accounts. Even close friends of Jackie's who fight to raise awareness about sexual assaults are doubtful, saying that Jackie first told them there were 5 attackers, but told the writer there were 7. The University of Virginia says it still plans to deal with sexual assault on campus, saying, quote, we will continue to take a hard look at our practices, policies and procedures, and continue to dedicate ourselves to becoming a model institution. And it should be noted that Jackie never filed a criminal complaint in this case. Megan.
Trace, thank you. Joining me now for more on this, Rich Lowry, editor of the National Review, a Fox News contributor, who also happens to be a University of Virginia alum. Rich, good to see you.
Thanks for having me.
And so you and I used to talk during the Duke fake rape case. At the time, people believed it was real. Now we know it was a complete farce made up by a very deranged person against 3 frat brothers. And when that case first started, I remembered the talk was, these fraternity guys, you know, they did it. They did it. They gang raped her, just as she said. You know how they got privilege, athletes, elite university. They did it. And a man named Britt Hume sent me down to Durham and said, go down there with an open mind and just report the facts as you find them. And I found a lot of facts, and none of them was helpful to the accuser's story. I'm going to get to my point in a second. I went on the air and started to report details that were potentially exonerating for the defense. And people started to come out and say, she's biased. Right. She's biased against the black victim. She's biased against a rape victim. She's anti-rape victims and pro-white defendants. And this is a sampling of what I was reporting at the time.
Alan, from 12:05 to 12:15 on the night in question, Seligman made 9 phone calls. 9. That is the time period, based on the accuser's allegations thus far, we believe the alleged rape, if one took place, was happening. This is the first time we have heard there was semen found inside of this accuser, and it belonged to someone other than the men who were at that house, someone other than a Duke lacrosse player. She was only given 60 seconds to pick somebody out. So they had the photo up there for 43 seconds. When the time was running out, she finally said, that looks like him, sort of. I'm 90% sure.
Right, Mark Furman.
That's the problem here, is that Mike Nifong looked at this case by assuming guilt and then trying to find a way to prove it. And then he was blind to the evidence that showed him exactly the opposite was true.
And now we know that was a made-up story.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that this case here is made up, but once again, a reporter at a minimum appears to have gotten far out ahead of her skis.
Yeah, there was a willing suspension of disbelief here on the part of the writer, the editors, and a lot of feminists who, one, have an ideology that you can never question an alleged victim, and 2, believe this is what fraternities are fundamentally. They're criminal organization with these horrible sociopathic misogynists. And people who are raising early doubts about the story, and it's unraveled much more quickly than the Little Cross case, were called the same sort of things you were when you were reporting about Duke.
Because you
were
are not allowed to
rapists.
stand up for the accused. If you do, the women who want to believe women who are making rape claims immediately look at you as a rape sympathizer, and a bizarre defender of an evil rapist, rather than an open-minded person who just wants to explore what the real facts are.
Right, and it's perfectly possible to believe 2 things at once. Most women are telling the truth when they say they've been raped.
They are. The stats show it.
But not all of them are.
Right.
And so that's why you have to have a critical mind about it. And that's why also importantly, women who have been raped have to go to the police. If this happened and she didn't go to the police, she was letting these guys go free to do it again.
She
and
wasn't even willing to tell people the name of the man she was accusing. And this happened a couple years ago. Wasn't even willing to tell her friends and others the name of the man that she was accusing up until recently. And then once that name came out, all of these discrepancies started to surface. There was no party on the night she claims that she was attacked at the party. There were no pledges at UVA during the fall semester. That's not allowed on the campus. This man she accused was not a lifeguard at the place. There were no Phi Psi lifeguards at the place she said she was lifeguarding with the accuser, with the attacker. This guy wasn't even in that fraternity. She said she was brought down a side staircase when she was exited from the party. There is no side staircase in this frat house.
This all gets to the point. Rolling Stone says, well, the alleged victim didn't want us to contact the accused. So maybe you show that deference to her. But what's the excuse for apparently checking out no details whatsoever?
Can I just you don't show that deference to her. No, you don't. You're investigating a story. You take the side of, you take the testimonial of one side. What reporter agrees to that? To not go check out the facts with the accused in a case where there are young men being accused of a gang rape? You say, I'm sorry, but that's a deal breaker, ma'am.
And something this explosive, you have to know it's true. Now, I blame Rolling Stone, obviously, but I also blame the University of Virginia. The way they responded to this in a complete defensive crouch, the UVA president suspending all the fraternities, the faculty of UVA, who are these politically correct sheep, buying this story hook, line, and sinker is just pathetic. Can't you have a little bit of faith in your own institution? Apparently not.
And don't they learn from past mistakes? We saw this in Duke when this woman came forward, made these accusations. You had a lunatic DA who has since been disbarred, making these accusations, notwithstanding the evidence, the forensic evidence and others, and they shut down the entire lacrosse program. Meanwhile, these guys had done nothing wrong. They hadn't laid a finger on this person, and their careers could have been ruined. They could have gone to prison if we hadn't stayed on the story and others stayed on the story and unearthed some of the exonerating details.
And just think of this in terms of common sense. You have 7 alleged attackers with 2 alleged supervisors. That's 9 guys at this fraternity. And there was a suggestion it was an initiation rite, so you had many, many others participating in gang rapes. Are you really going to have dozens and dozens of guys that have no conscience whatsoever, who don't whisper a word of this to anyone, engaging in this criminal conspiracy over the years? It defies
It's not
belief.
that it could never happen, because sadly it's been documented that events like that have happened at universities, and certainly rape has happened at many universities, including the UVA. But the question is, you have to investigate both sides. You cannot just take an accuser's word as gospel. The way the piece was written is as though it were fact. In fact, there's very infrequent use of "she alleges," according to Jackie. It's offered as though it's been ascertained and confirmed, and the reader walks away thinking UVA's got a huge problem on its hands.
And just a tiny little tell for me in this story as well. There's a reference in it to the throngs of tanned, toned, and overwhelmingly blonde students at UVA. I went to UVA. Maybe I was in the wrong circles, but that's not the UVA I know. Maybe that's Arizona State or
except for
University
the
of Stockholm. Yeah, but it all went to the point that this is the bastion of white male privilege, and therefore rapists rape at will and go free.
And the reporter was searching university to university for one she was going to target for a rape victim to come forward, and she settled on UVA. Query whether the tan tone thing was part of it. Rich,
I was tanned and toned. Let's just
and still are. That's obvious. Absolutely. The audience was just thinking that. Good to see you.
Have a good night.
Well, clearly some of UVA's alumni community were skeptical of the story from day one, but not so for some major media outlets. Rolling Stone wasn't the only one to jump on this. Howie Kurtz is next on the pile-on that we saw almost as soon as the story came out. And why was that? Plus, as we watch a new series of protests unfolding across the country, Christmas shopping is getting dramatic in New York City, where this scene played out inside Macy's tonight.